So finally, we are going over our House of David overview, episode 8. This is a much better episode, I think, than 6 and 7. 6 and 7, I had a little bit of trouble with, right when it got into like the AI stuff and then some other stuff beyond that. There's just some things that fell off a little bit for me, but I think episode 8 definitely brings it back. We get some scriptural moments, obviously, it's the season finale with Goliath and everything, but then also we get some really unique character moments as well. We see some character development, especially from David, and kind of going into what is happening within this series overall. I will say this, I'm pleased with this series. I think it's really good, and I would recommend it to anybody that wants to watch it. Now, of course, go watch my overviews and my deep dives that we're doing on the series overall. We'll be doing a bunch of deep dives once The Chosen is out of theaters, so hold on for that. But man, I really think that this series is actually solid. Really well done. So let's go over episode 8 and talk through all this stuff right here. Now, first things first, we start off this episode within the camp of the Philistines, okay, nearby the Philistines. We saw in episode 7 that Jonathan got sent out with a band of mercenaries in order to go infiltrate the Philistine camp. Previously in scripture, we've seen that Jonathan has infiltrated Philistine encampments by himself and killed them all, basically. And then obviously the men of Israel were like, dang, this guy's epic, right? And then they go and they help him. Here we see that they get utterly destroyed, like immediately. Okay, someone in their group actually turncoats, and one of the bandits is, he's working for the Philistines. This guy right here, that's Jonathan, but the other guy, he turncoats and begins killing everybody that's over here. And he's like, I'm sorry, my prince, they paid me more. Of course, he's a mercenary. If he gets paid more, he's good to go. So they paid him more there. And he gets captured by everyone here. And that includes Achish, who comes out and kind of grabs him, and Jonathan tries to fight his way out, but he can't really do anything here. And so we see as Jonathan tries to fight, he actually does kill quite a few people here. And then Achish finally gets his soldiers to grab him, and they contain him here as he's getting into this. So we continue on from there. We see that Goliath again is kind of, yelling at everybody that is on the battlefield. We see the Valley of Elah. I do think they do a pretty good job with the Valley of Elah overall. I've been to this area several times in Israel, and it's pretty reminiscent of this. It's not perfect, but it's pretty reminiscent of this for sure. So we continue on. We see that Goliath actually delivers some of the heads of the people that came and attacked them last night, and he calls out all of the Israelites being like, why would you send these weaklings to come and fight me? You won't even send a champion during the day, but you're going to try to send someone to kill me in the nighttime. Like, how dare you? Why would you do this? Kind of just like taunting them, right? Now at this point, we see Abner, as Abner believes that Jonathan is dead as well, because all these other people that he sent with Jonathan are dead. And so they're kind of freaking out a little bit. Adriel is looking over the shoulder, and he's going to kind of call out Saul again here, where they're not going to have another option. Adriel is going to have to take control of the army. Otherwise, what are we going to do? Like especially if they've lost Jonathan, then Saul's crazy. Like, we need someone to lead here. And Adriel is really going to push in this episode to be that guy, to lead the army and to really jump into it here. Now we jump back to Jonathan, and he is in the tent of Achish, and Achish is kind of impressed with him, to be honest with you. Like, he's kind of like, hey, like, you killed a lot of my guys. Good job, but he talks to Achish, and they have a conversation here. Jonathan insults him pretty much throughout the entire thing, talking about his dad and how Saul, his dad, killed Achish's dad, and how he's not really even a king. He's just like a little baby boy who got given this role and stuff like that. And so he kind of is messing with him the whole time, and Achish is firing back. Essentially, he knows that he's in control of the situation. He doesn't lose his temper, and he kind of allows Jonathan to kind of speak and do whatever here. But he eventually sends Jonathan off after this scene with a message back to the Israelites as he cuts his what do you call it? Like his the rope around his hands and stuff, bindings. That's the word I was looking for. So he cuts his bindings and he sends him back to the camp of Israel to give them a message, which of course is to surrender. Achish wants them to surrender so that they can just get done with this battle and be over with it. And he tells him that not only do we have Goliath in front of you, but we actually have the fifth clan of the Philistines that is behind you with even more giants. They didn't verify this. They don't even ever show it in the show. But this is what he says. And that's what Jonathan has to go off of and believe it to be truth. So we see that here. And so he talks about this. The next time I see you, my arrow will pierce your heart. Now, he has a little bit of a flashback here because remember on Mount Sinai, Jonathan sees this, where Achish does actually kill him. And I believe this will happen in the show. We know that Jonathan dies. This is exactly how he dies from this battle there that happens with Saul and him. They both die. And so we know that's actually going to happen. And so we'll see how that takes place over time. We continue on, and we get a scene with Ahinoam. This is Kezia from episode 1 as well, who was flirting with Eshbal at the time. We see that she is hiding the fact that Merab and Michal actually went to the battlefield. They told Kezia, but they told her, do not tell anybody. Like basically keep our secret hidden. And so she does that, and Ahinoam gets really mad. she's like, how dare you keep this secret from me? Like, I am your queen. And so Kezia really freaks out. She's like, don't banish me, please. Please don't banish me. And then she kind of sends her off. Unclear if she's banished, but she's definitely not welcome in Ahinoam's sight anymore because she was trying to keep that kind of secret. The ladies, the princesses, finally get to the battlefield, and they say, bring us to the king. Immediately, the soldiers recognize who they are because they're princesses, and then they get sent to Saul. Merab actually goes somewhere else, while Michal goes to the tent of the king to go and deal with that stuff there. So Merab kind of goes off on her own, dealing with something else. Then we see this section here as Michal is trying to kind of call back her father, and she's in the real world, but he's kind of having like this vision of her as well. And so we see as she's kind of aggressive in the dream, she's trying to wake him up. She's like, the Lord, your God, who goes before you always. She's reading through these scriptures that she had brought with her. He himself will fight for you. And so she's reading this out and talking to him here. And she kind of aggressively kind of gets him out of this coma as he slightly wakes up and says her name. Then we get to this moment here with Ahinoam and the rest of them as they're back at the castle. They're at this point thinking, okay, Saul's going to die. We've heard some horrible things from the battlefield. So we're just going to sit here and wait to die. And the enemy is going to come and kill us. Okay. And so she's talking here about her earlier life where she actually went to Egypt for a vacation, which feels super strange to me because if she's an Israelite, like the last place you would ever want to go on vacation was Egypt. Even if there was something spectacular happening there, right? It's only been about 500 years since the time of Moses. So like here, it just feels super strange that if she is an Israelite, she would want to see, like she would, first of all, think that Pharaoh was cool and that he looked awesome in his gold armor and stuff. But she's like, that's a real king and we need a king for Israel. Like I get that like distorted, like we need a king for Israel type deal. But the fact that it's Egypt is crazy. The fact that it's Egypt is like really, really crazy. Yeah, that was kind of weird. Anyway, so we see this here. She talks about it sitting at the table. Then we get a surprise guest. They believe she's talking to the witch, by the way, this whole time. They're like best friends now, which is super weird. But they see as people enter into the palace, and she thinks it's the enemy coming to kill her. And so here she believes this is the enemy and they're going to die. But then it cuts to him. And this is Eshbal. If you remember early on, of course, this is her son that she banished, and then he got taken by some other group. We have no idea who that group is. We still don't know who that group is, but he's obviously changed quite a bit. Now he's kind of more of a warrior. He's got a sword. He's got armor. He seems like he's in a pretty strong position here. And he comes back and he talks to Ahinoam, and they have a bit of a chat here. She's kind of stunned, obviously, by his return. Then we see as David finally gets to the battlefield, which of course is where we start with our scripture. And so we see as they move forward that, he gives all the stuff to the people, and he begins to hear Goliath here. We're going to play a little bit of this. Let me turn this up a little bit. You fight the God of Israel. So again, he sees the lion. He flashes back to when he was a kid. This is when his mom died, right? But he eventually killed that lion. And this is where his heart kind of like pumps into action.
Who is this giant to defy the armies of the living God?
Now, of course, we get into some scripture here. Let's get into that. So 1 Samuel chapter 17 is where we see all this kind of play out, right? Now, the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Saul, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Saul and Ezekah in Ephes Damim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in the line of battle against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, then the Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with a valley in between them. And there came out of the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath. Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and his arms. He was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And his shield bearer went before him. He stood and shouted at the ranks of Israel. This is where we kind of start here. Why have you come out to draw up a battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man of yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words, the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, named Jesse, who had 8 sons. In the days of Saul, the man was already old and advanced in years. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to the battle, and the names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab, firstborn, the next was Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistines came forward and took this stand morning and evening. So this is 40 days into the battle where this happens, okay? Then Jesse says, take all this stuff to the battlefield. Okay, we get that. Now Saul and all of his men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines, and David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper and took the provisions and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the encampment as the host was going out to the battle line, shouting the war cry, and Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage, and ran to the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. And he talked with them. Behold, this champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. And all the men of Israel saw the man, fled from him, and were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the kings will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel, or forgive his debts. This is what we saw early on in episode 7, by the way, when Saul runs away. He's like, I'll give you anything. I'll give you my daughter. I'll forgive your debts, anything, right? And so that's kind of where that comes from. And David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done to the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way. So shall it be done to the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil in your heart, for you have come to see the battle. Okay, that's kind of where we are currently in the show. Hey, real quick, I hope you're enjoying these videos. We put a lot of work into making these videos the best that we possibly can for you guys. If you want to help to support our channel and support what we do here on The Chosen Sleuth, then the best way to do that is through snipesupport.com. This is our Patreon where you can donate $5, $10, or $25 a month in order to help us to continue to make videos just like this, to have the time to spend hours and hours and hours and hours doing research and putting these videos together. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Thank you guys so much for your support.
No one can face him, boy.
Why? He is one man.
He is a god among men.
There is one God, and he fights with us.
David, what are you doing?
How many days have you all stood here listening to him? Who is he?
He's called Goliath. He serves Achish, Seren of Gath.
And not one of you will fight him?
You want to fight him? Here's our champion. He wants to fight the giant.
Now they start making fun of him here. It's a little bit different than scripture, what we see here, but we see David saying, some of the same things that we see throughout scripture. And as they keep on going, we actually see that Abner is the one that pulls him in. He says, "You will go to the king," and he brings him in front of the king because this is the first man ever in the 40 days here that has offered to fight Goliath. And so they're thinking, okay, well, maybe this could work. Maybe there's something here. We're not sure. But then David goes and he speaks with Saul. And again, we see some of the scripture here as it plays out.
When the lion attacked my flock and rose against me, I went after it, caught it by its beard, struck it, and killed it.
That's true, my king. He did.
I've been there.
Before, I love this line. He's like, "It's true, my king, he did." And then Eliab's like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, "Yeah, what? I always believed him."
I always believed
You
it.
are not helping.
This giant blasphemes the Lord of hosts. But the same Lord who rescued me from the lion and the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine.
That monster is a man of war. He was made for this.
I was made for this moment.
So he talks very confidently here. We see as David plays this out, and we see that Saul actually says, "Go," and then he kind of corrects himself. He says, "Go," and then he says, "Go, fight this giant." So Saul gives his blessing here. He says, "Give him my armor," and we'll go through this. Now, back at home, this is not a scriptural section pretty much at all, but we see Eshbal as he talks to Ahinoam, and Eshbal basically comes to the conclusion that the army is going to be defeated. Everyone's going to die, including Saul and Jonathan and the girls and everything, okay? The only way to save Israel now is to join with some of the north tribe, which I guess is the tribe of Dan. I'm not sure who this is that's not connected to the Israelites that are there currently with Saul, but he's with some other group. And so I guess we'll find out later in another season. But basically he's like, okay, you're going to need to pronounce me king in order to save our nation, the people of Israel. And so Ahinoam really does not want to do this, but it seems like she's going to go ahead and move forward with it. Then we see this scene. This scene is probably the most controversial out of this episode. We see David putting on the armor of Saul, and Michal kind of comes into the tent and talks with him. And they begin talking through like what's happening here. She gives him a scroll from Joshua that, of course, says "Be strong and courageous." And so she kind of reads. It's like a paraphrase, basically, that she's written down for him to have, so that he will be strong and courageous. That he can be strong here and win the battle. Hopefully, not die. But she definitely thinks he's going to die at this moment, right? It's a summary. I ran out of space, and so then they continue, and then it gets really lovey-dovey, and then she kind of touches him, and then they kiss, right? And then it's like weird because like they kiss once and then they back up and then they like start making out. This was very strange, right? Because like this is like real bad, right? Like this is not like normal behavior for teenagers. Yes, of course there is exceptions to the rule, but the reason why the rule exists is because most people would follow that, right? So this is a very strange thing that's happening here, like in culturally wise. So this is definitely like one of those moments where they're like, yeah, forget culture, forget what actually would have probably happened. Let's make this a good, like, lovey-dovey moment, right? And so that's kind of what happens here. They kind of make out a bit, and then she's like, go kill a giant. You got this, boy. I love you. Then she doesn't say I love you, but yeah, that's what happens. Of course, there's going to be drama with that later on because Merab, her sister, actually gets betrothed to David, at least for a little while, until she's given to Adriel instead. And so we're going to see that. And then we're also going to see, obviously, Michal and David actually become married later on. Now here, Jonathan comes back to the group, and Abner says, how did you survive? How are you still alive? He tells him that Achish let him go. And then he delivers the message here to the group, basically saying like, hey, they have giants on all sides of us. They have us surrounded. We need to figure this out. And this is when we see a couple of the different things happening here. We see that Jonathan is like figuring out about this champion that's going to be taking place. And Adriel is pushing towards becoming king as well. So he doesn't want this little shepherd boy to go out there and fight, because if he loses, then the rest of Israel is going to fall. And so there's a lot of stuff that happens there. So he's fighting. He's like, okay, Saul will come out and speak to us right now, or he'll forfeit his right to lead. And he thinks that Saul is still sick in his tent, but Michal has helped him. And then Saul says, you want my crown, Adriel? Then try to take it from me, and he's basically threatening him with a fight there. Then we jump to this scene here, which is quite interesting as well. We see David as he goes down to the brook to get the 5 stones, as he's putting those in his pouch here. And we see Jonathan talking to him. Jonathan is actually quite excited to meet him because he figures out during this conversation that David is the anointed one that he's heard about from Solomon. And so he's kind of on his side. He's ready to help him here. He says, did the prophet sorry, I said Solomon again, didn't I? I did that in the last episode. The prophet Samuel. Did the prophet Samuel visit your family? All these things are too connected. My brain just doesn't have enough wires to connect them all properly. So did the prophet Samuel visit your family? And David kind of hesitates for a while, but then he says, yes. And then here he thought Jonathan was going to be mad, but he just trusted in God. And Jonathan's actually, he's on his side here. He's like ready to help him. Now this armor here that Jonathan's wearing is quite interesting. I wonder if they will give it to David in the show, because in scripture, he actually gives this armor to David, as after he kills Goliath and stuff. So I wonder how much of that aftermath we're going to see in the show overall. The shot is near impossible, but he gives him a little bit of a hint here. But he's exposed just after he throws his spear. So he's saying, wait for him to throw a spear, then you can go in for the kill shot there as they go through. Now, they try to stop the shepherd boy from going into this, but David just walks right by. And then we get a lot of the scene that we get from scripture in this, where Goliath's like, okay, you send out this little tiny boy, like, what is happening here? You know, like, why is he coming at me? Do you think I'm a dog? Like, he's coming out with a stick, you know? And so we see that in scripture. If we go back to 1 Samuel chapter 17, we see as, first of all, we get all this section here. David, what have I done now? Was it not but a word? He turned away from him toward another and spoke in the same way. And the people answered him again as before. When the words of David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and they sent for him. And so let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. So again, we see that there. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears. We saw him talk about that. This Philistine will be just like them. The Lord delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear. He will deliver me from this Philistine. And Saul said, go, and the Lord will be with you. Then he took his staff, and he chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. The Philistine moved forward and came near to David, and his shield bearer in front of him. And when the Philistine looked at David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come with me with sticks? The Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air, the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with sword and spear and with the javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I will give you the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all his assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. So that's kind of what happens here. The Philistine rose and came near David. David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. All right, cool. Very cool stuff. That's essentially what happens here. We see all of that dialogue pretty much happen, and then David actually gets hit, as we saw in the intro, this moment here where David gets hit slightly with a spear. Now, this doesn't say that this happened in the scripture, but of course it's adding drama, right, to the whole situation here, which makes a lot of sense. Here we see David on the ground as he's been hit with the spear, not fatally wounded or anything like that, probably just a scratch on the side that's making him bleed. And then we see as David arises and he grabs the stone. This is one of the points where I was like, oh, come on, you could have had him grab it out of his bag like scripture says, but he grabbed it off of the ground. And of course, since his hand is bloodied because of the spear, it looks like the stone that we saw previously when he met with the angel of the Lord earlier on in the other episode. So then he rises up and he goes to attack Goliath, and he waits for that perfect moment when Goliath is throwing another spear. And again, he says, for my mother, because of course that's why Goliath is doing it in this show here. And then he is able to dodge the spear with an epic jump attack and take out Goliath, which of course is the biggest sort of like, underdog story ever, right? He dodges out of the way, he throws it, and there's the stone. I like the way they did this. It just completely just smashes Goliath right there. He tries to block it with the shield, but it hits him right in the forehead, and you can see where it indents his helmet, and he's there. So he kind of stands up for a second, but then his body kind of gives way, and he falls to the ground. This is actually a real stunt that he did here as he falls. He actually just filmed this straight to the ground as he falls, which is pretty cool. Pretty good shot. I think there's some padding there. You don't bounce like that off the ground, but yeah, pretty good section here. Then, of course, my favorite part is he grabs his giant anime sword and chops off the head of Goliath, which I love. I love that they have that in there. A lot of David and Goliath stories don't have that, and so it's a really, really cool moment. This shot in particular is pretty cool. I love that they have like the giant head, and then his head is kind of down as he's humbly kind of like raising this up. They talked about this a little bit in an interview that they did with Michal and with Martin Ford, who play David and Goliath. So then this rallies all the rest of the soldiers. Of course, he kills Goliath, and they run forward. One thing that I didn't mention that's a small portion here is that Eliab actually grabs a bow and arrow because he believes that David is going to die. And so he thinks that he's going to get wounded, and then the giant is going to slowly kill him. And so he actually grabs a bow and arrow in order to be able to kill David, before he's tortured, basically, to save his brother from that torture. But obviously, he doesn't actually need to use it. He's about to at one point, but then he doesn't. And then he's standing here with the sword as they all rush into battle. And that is the end. Now, this sword, I believe, keeps on changing size. There is no way, there's no shot that David can hold this sword with one hand. This sword has to be gigantic. Again, earlier on in a previous episode, we saw how big this thing was, and I'll get into that in my deep dives, but it's very interesting how this sword keeps on changing size in between each section. Now, here we see as well, Ishbal is crowned king. This isn't going to last. This is not a scriptural thing. Right when Saul comes home, he's going to get kicked out of this position and something else is going to happen here. He does become king, but not yet. He becomes king after Saul dies for only 2 years. And so scripturally, we know that he will become king, but not quite yet. So that's how this ends here. Everybody goes into battle. We see all of the Israelites with like random spears and pitchforks and stuff because there wasn't a lot of metal that they had. And then we see as the king of the Philistines is there, but they look on the ridge and Samuel is there as well. They saw that right before David goes into battle. But yeah, there would be zero chance that David would be able to hold up that sword like we see there at the end. So it's just very, very funny to me. But great show so far. I think episode 8 was really well done. I'm not so sure about like the whole kissing thing with Michal. I get it. Like it's a show. You're trying to add that love interest and all that kind of stuff. And I get that like David has a proclivity to that already. I just don't think that was where his mind was in any way during that point. I don't even think he knew who Michal was during this point. Of course, that doesn't make for great television, I'm sure. So anyway, those are my thoughts about House of David episode 8. That's just an overview of what we're talking about here, some of the scripture that's going into it. We will do deep dives into all this stuff later on, talk about what's important, what's not important, what's scriptural, what's not scriptural, and kind of dive into every little piece of it overall. Yeah. Some fun stuff here. I thought they did a great job with it. First season of this show is great. I cannot wait to see what they learn in season 2 and in season 3, 4, 5, however many they do. I know that they're filming season 2 currently, so I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, we'll get into our deep dives of all this stuff very soon. So make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.